And we are live. Let's begin properly. In the name of the one God who bears many names. Some know him as Jah, others know him as Jehovah. Some know him as Dios, some know him as Bon Dieu, some know him as Ashe or Abdumare. I bear witness to the oneness of Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, the supreme being, to whom holy praises are forever due. We thank him for his merciful intervention in our phase and raising one from among us here in the wilderness of North America, in the hells of the Western Hemisphere, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. We thank them both for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In their divine names, I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And welcome to Nuestra NOI broadcast. Nuestra NOI means our nation of Islam in Spanish. We'd like to thank all who have supported our pages on Facebook and YouTube. If you are on these platforms, please share as much as you can. Share with the believing body. Share with those that are in need of the message at this time, of a message of upliftment, a message that will get us safely to the other side of the sad and horrific conditions of this world today. I'd like to thank the panelists for coming on to the program. Today, of course, our programs feature our beloved brother, student minister Abel Muhammad, a brother here not here physically, I'm in Miami. My name is Brother Tony Muhammad. I forgot to introduce myself. But our beloved brother in Chicago, Brother Abel, has been working hard to unite our people there in Chicago. As members of the Nation of Islam elsewhere, of course, we're working hard to unite our people. But our brothers in the national headquarters, I'd like to introduce our brother, Brother Abel. If you could say a few words of introduction, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, dear brother. En el nombre de Allah, el benéfico, el misericordioso. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that he came to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. And I thank him for coming to us and raising from amongst us and for us all the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And for those two preparing and making one for us today to lead, teach, and guide us onto the straight path and get us safely through the fall of this world, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It's a great honor to be here with everyone once again this evening as I greet you in peace. In the language of Arabic, we say Assalamu alaikum, which means in English, peace be unto you, or in Espanol, significa que la paz sea con usted. I'm looking forward to this another wonderful part of our conversation.
All praises due to Allah. And joining us in this broadcast, we have the student captain over Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our beloved brother, Brother David Muhammad, who is not just simply a captain, but he's a minister captain.
That's right.
He is a brother who has been studying the teachings intensely since I've known him. He is of Puerto Rican descent, and he is a historian. He's on the team to teach us in the Nation of Islam, and those of us that are not registered members of the Nation of Islam, the true history of our Nation of Islam. Brother David, if you could say some words of introduction.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, family.
Walaikum salam, sir.
En el nombre de Allah, benéfico y misericordioso, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful. Just want to say thank you, Brother Student Minister Abel, for this platform, Brother Tony, for the hard work that you do, and for the brotherhood, and for those behind the scenes, Brother Michael and Sister Nadira and others, for helping to make this platform happen. And I'm looking forward to tonight's dialogue and discussion with regards to the indigenous people, the so-called Latino, and the broader members of the original family, according to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
All praises due to Allah. Beloved brothers, we're going to begin our program here. Of course, we're going to be taking questions. If you have any questions, brothers and sisters, you could post them on Facebook. Also, on our platform on YouTube. We'll be answering questions from both platforms tonight. Also, we want to thank Closing the Gap for making their platform available. You could also watch it through Closing the Gap. Any of these three platforms, go ahead and post your question. We will do our very best to get to all the questions, or as many of them as we possibly can tonight, because I know that our listening audience, our viewing audience has plenty of questions for us. We're going to begin with a statement from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is sound doctrine to us. A message to the black man in America. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says on page 54, in a subtext entitled, "A good name is better than gold." He writes, one of the first and most important truths that must be established in this day is our identity. Brother David, if you could begin addressing this concept. I'm gonna read it one more time from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. One of the first and most important truths that we must establish in this day is our identity. Our identity. How important is for us to know our true identity and walk in the path of that identity?
Yeah, yes, sir. I want to make sure that you all can hear me loud and clear. The two of you all have much more experience doing the broadcast, so I just want to praise be to Allah. I just want to start with this point right here. Our identity transcends language, it transcends border, and it transcends the boundaries that divide the members of the human family that are artificial. If I'm born in one part of the earth, let's say, for example, my family is from Puerto Rico and I'm born on the island, but I die in China, the earth in China is not going to reject me when they bury my body. So teaches the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So lifting up that point, understanding who we truly are as descendants of the originator, who we are, our identity is in the nature of God. And so that being said, when we really want to dig to the root, we don't deal with branches and we don't deal with those things that have been set up to divide us from each other in artificial ways. I do want to make sure that I qualify that statement, however, because when you look at the so-called Latino, and when you look at those of us who are colonized people or enslaved people, you are looking at a people who have been the victims of identity theft. And so you are not looking at a people who have a thorough knowledge of self. Elijah Muhammad taught us that the knowledge of self is the most precious of all knowledges because it is really the knowledge of God. And the knowledge of God being the knowledge of self, it connects us as descendants of the originator of the heavens and the earth. That's opposite what we were taught in many regards in the institutions of religion and in the educational institutions. I'll give an example. For those of our family who are listening and for those who may not know, when you know something of the history of the Mexican people, in 1531, there was an indigenous man whose name was Tizoc, who saw a vision of a brown-skinned mother of the gods, all right, mother of the gods. Her name was Tonantzin. Now, he presented his vision to a Spanish priest who told him he was incorrect and who then baptized him as a Christian ultimately and then renamed him from Tizoc into Juan Diego and told him that who he saw was not Tonantzin, but was the Virgin Mary. And that is the story of La Virgen de Guadalupe. And that's why when you see an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe, she is brown-skinned or dark-skinned, different from the white virgin that many of us have been given, okay? I say that for a reason, because the X doesn't just apply to those of us who've been enslaved through the transatlantic slave trade. The X applies to those of us who have been Caucasianized and Christianized under the cross of Spain as well. And so you have 21 nations that are Spanish speaking, not to include the Portuguese speaking ones. And when you look at the records of the ships that enslaved Africans as cargo and traded them after the decimation of the indigenous people and then the mixing of those peoples, you see that 95% of all of those enslaved Africans were brought into what is called Latin America. The aim of the enemy was to create the new Roman Latin Empire. So when we talk identity, we have to be very clear. You see a lot of our young people nowadays talking about, I am Latinx, so I'm Afro-Latino, I'm this and I'm that. And it's good that we're reaching for something, a branch of knowledge. But what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us was root knowledge. And so when we look at that chapter that we're reading from, it's called A Good Name is Better Than Gold. We established that on the name side of things. But there's also something that connects us to our people and to a land that we can call our own. Elijah Muhammad said we must have some land that we can call our own. My family was from the island of Puerto Rico. It's a beautiful island, but it's one island. And there's a whole lot of islands in the Caribbean. And all of us have been conquered and colonized by some other nation. And the divisions of those nations that conquered and colonized us have been superimposed on the thinking of us as the colonized people. And so the Spanish-speaking Caribbean doesn't get along with the French-speaking Caribbean. The French-speaking Caribbean doesn't get along with the English-speaking Caribbean. Then you have some of the English-speaking Caribbean that doesn't get along with the Dutch-speaking Caribbean. And some of the English ones don't get along with the other English-speaking ones for various reasons of divisions. So we've taken on the thinking of our enemy and now superimposed it on our treatment of each other. And so that is why the enemy has been able to come in and take not only our resources from the land, but they have been able to give us their thinking that has perpetuated the same level of self-destructive behavior since they left us, and even since some of us have what we call independence. And so I'm bringing those things up because there's much to be said, but the question of identity really is who do we identify with in the truest sense? Our identity comes directly from Allah God. Our identity is that which connects us to the darker people of the earth. And our identity is in truth the nature of God, because all of us who were created from God come from that nature, all of us except that one who has been produced to bring about a rebellion against God's will, so we would come face to face with the weakness of self. But that time is over, and it's time for us to have the knowledge of self.
Absolutely. Praise be to Allah. And Brother David, I find it interesting that when the Spanish came, along with the English and the French, they introduced something to us called land ownership. We didn't have any concept of land ownership like that, individual land ownership, but also coupled with that, we were taking on their names forcibly. Yes, Student Minister Abel, if you could speak a little bit on that, and especially in regards to our identity and what our true identity is, sir.
You know, brothers, as I was listening to Brother David, I had looked up the definition of that word identity. And it means, depending on what dictionary, it means the distinguishing character or personality of an individual. It means the condition of being the same with something described or asserted. Sameness of essential or generic character in different instances. Sameness in all that constitutes the objective reality of a thing. Oneness. It comes from a Latin root word, which means same. So when we're talking about identity, we're talking about that which we feel reflects in us and that we wish to be connected to as a reflection of. It's something that determines who or what a person is, who or how people view us. And in this beautiful book that every Aboriginal person on the planet, no matter how light or how dark you are, Message to the Black Man is not a book of race or religion. It's a book of truth. And you should read this book. And starting on page 54, which Brother Tony read from and Brother David referenced, it's a section called A Good Name is Better Than Gold. And in this section, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad mentions and talks to us about how when you say a name, for example, like Lu Chin,
come on,
the name
automatically brings a person's identity without you ever having seen a picture. If I say Bruce Lee, if I say a name of those Asiatic countries, a picture automatically comes up in our mind, connecting us through that name to a land, China, to a culture, the Chinese people, to a history, to a people who have and are producing for themselves on land of their own, all with a name. Here we are, we have all of these nations, so-called Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, which we all are represented here on this conversation. But if we say the name Jose Rodriguez, a certain picture may come up in our mind, but those are not the names of the people, the original people who are from the Western Hemisphere.
That's right.
Those are names, and if you really go and examine them, if you go and examine the last name Perez,
Come on.
you find those names today carried by the people who call themselves Israelis.
Come on then.
Mm-hmm.
You find those names from European people in what is today called Spain and other parts of the planet, but they weren't our native names. Those were not our original names, yet today we wear them like some sort of badge of honor. And it's such a confusing history, as Brother Student Captain David was saying, because yes, the last 5 centuries now, we have been under these names and these labels and these flags, but they don't describe who we really are, and we are not really identified with them. That's why we don't have the support of those names. We were given those names. Those names were placed on us when we were placed in bondage under those names. That's why the X is relevant to us.
That's right.
Because those names are our slave names. Maybe it wasn't 3 centuries of chattel slavery. Maybe it was a brief couple of decades, but nonetheless, it wasn't physical slavery, but it has become mental slavery for us, where we no longer speak the language of our forefathers, wear the names of our forefathers. So we've been consumed by foreigners, consumed by an enemy who now has us misidentifying ourselves. Well, what's the big deal, somebody may ask? What's the difference if I don't know my name, if I don't know my culture? Who cares? That was a long time ago. We can say that, but today we're living in a condition that is directly a result of that mis and disinformation. If we don't know who we are, then how can we even know who our friends and who our enemies are when we don't know who we are?
Teach.
Since they're basing their identification of us based on what we're saying is our name, saying is our relation. Yet they look at us and they say, oh, how can you be Jim Jones? You're from Mexico. And that is how we should see ourselves. How can I be Jose Perez? And my ancestors are the original people of this hemisphere who never spoke that language, who didn't wear those type of names. How can I find my identity? How can I lean on that for strength and for connection and for a sense of self? And when I don't know myself, then I can be victimized by any and everyone else. And that is what is happening. We victimize ourselves because we don't recognize who we are. So now we fall victims to anyone who does know who they are. And our enemy is the one who put us in this condition. And he laughs at us. He encourages us to wear that name, be proud of that name, knowing that we're not really connected to that name because that name doesn't give us any power. It doesn't give us any sense of self. How do we know that? Look at the condition of the whole hemisphere of people wearing that name. We are not empowered. And what they really fear is that we would look past the veil of ignorance, past the web of deceit and lies, and look at the truth that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Luz Farrakhan are offering to us as Chicanos, as Boricuas, as the people of the Caribbean, people of Central and South America, not Indians, but the original people.
Come on.
Members of the Aboriginal family, we are being given access to a truth which will enliven you, inspire you, lift you up where you and I belong. And it starts by knowing who and what we are. And we are not some little island. We are not some little 500-year-old nation. We are the people of the Creator, the Creator's nation. That's our true identity. That's the sameness and the root of where you'll find who we really are. But the enemy does not want us to get there. So he has us instead trying to defend our nationality that he gave to us, rather than us dig and read and look at and accept the truth of what Almighty God Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, has given to us. And when I say us, nuestro, nuestra, that's why we say Nuestra NOI. This is our truth, because we have a right to it. When Master Fard Muhammad came to North America, he came to give life to a dead people. That wasn't just the so-called Negro in America. That was the so-called Negro everywhere that they could be found, but it started in North America.
That's right.
But he told us, in identifying us as members of the original nation, he told us who was with that number. It wasn't just so-called American Negroes. He included the Indian in that number.
That's right.
That's right.
He included all over the planet Earth. At that time, 4,400,000,000. Were some of them in Mexico? Absolutely. Were some of them in Puerto Rico? Absolutely. Were they in Cuba? Absolutely. Were they in Venezuela? Were they in Panama? Were they in the Dominican Republic, Haiti? Were they in Chile? Were they in Chile, in Argentina, Bolivia, Costa Rica? We just saw the Olympics. Everywhere on the planet today, you find our people, because the earth belongs to us. So what we want today is not just a title that we are coming up with on ourselves based off of our research into white people's anthropological studies and findings and their warped and incomplete history. With their history of lies and deceptions, how could we trust anything that they give us on an academic level, on any level? So we must have a pure, unadulterated truth, and that's what we're here to talk about, who we really are. Not just what makes us feel good, because it takes us at least a step away from the enemy, possibly, but how far out of the web can we be when we're still calling ourselves by their names, their language, with their approval?
Come on.
Yeah, we're not Latinx.
Come on.
We're ex-Latinos.
That's right. There it is.
That's right.
The X means unknown. Most of us don't know anymore who our tribes were, who our chiefs were, who our caciques were. We don't know anything about that lineage, because they destroyed it all. And then they have the nerve to want to judge us because we want to reconnect to our identity. No, we're not going to allow that division today. We're not going to be divided as Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and Cubans, Haitians and Dominican Republicans. No, no, no. We are going to be what we were in the beginning, the same, identified by who we really are, connected to one another, not by a flag of our enemy or a language and culture imposed by our colonizers, but by our essence and who we really are.
All praise is due to Allah. Student Minister Abel, just reflecting on some of the words that you had to say, sameness to the enemy is having the privilege to wear their names, which the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us a message to the black man that signifies ownership over us. Many of us are carrying around the last name Rodriguez, and we don't know where it comes from. It comes from Rodrigo, the Visigothic king, which was toppled over when the Moors took over Spain. We don't know it comes from that. And so when we wear these names, we don't know where they come from. We don't even know that they have meaning.
That's right.
So really they become meaningless, and we become a meaningless people. When we seek an identity that's not ours, a bastardized way of condition called Hispanidad or Latinidad, which none of these terms really signify who we truly are.
That's right.
There is a question from, I believe it's Facebook, Brother Kamal X in Tampa. He poses a question, if I may. It says here, of what faith, religion do we find most of our Latino family today? Does the enemy use the same tactics of control in their religions? I'm going to just allow either one of you to answer the question.
Well, I would say, if I may.
Yes, sir, Brother David.
The majority of the Spanish-speaking people, as well as when we look at the majority of those colonized outside of America, find themselves as Catholic, under the Catholic Church. And when you look at the history of the Catholic Church and the papal bulls, they claimed, you should look those histories up, family. They claimed the indigenous people, they claimed the territories, they claimed the lands here. And so many of us are culturally indoctrinated that way. And so in terms of religion, that becomes a part of the identity of the people. But when you look and study us, and some of us are coming from different faith walks as well, because I know in Puerto Rico, we have a whole lot. My family had members that were Pentecostal and others that were Baptist. But by and large, the majority of us have been Christianized by the Catholic Church. And I think the second part of that question, I don't know, Brother Student Minister Abel, we certainly can speak to how the enemy uses tactics of control in religion. I'm not sure. I will allow you, please, Brother Minister, you take that one.
Sure. Yes, sir. You know, as I'm thinking about it, and I was listening to you say that, you know, even though Catholicism is still the overwhelming religion, it's a dying religion.
Right.
It's a religion that is lost and is losing every day more and more of its hold on the people. We see what are the Pentecostal groups growing, in particular in the United States, but we also see Islam growing.
That's right.
Right.
We also see a return to many of our people seeking to practice in any way that they can find the practices of our indigenous ancestors, whether it be through tribal cultural customs, or even joining on to similar or other tribes that will accept them and teach them their ways, because there's a desire for us to know, because we're at a time where the time is requiring more of us. And we can no longer, it never fit us, but now at the end of the end, it is becoming obvious that the lies are being uncovered. The deceit is being exposed. The mistreatment and the cruelty that was done to us is absolutely being used as a tool. And in the past, we would be divided. There would be somebody who, oh, you're not a Catholic. It was such a big deal to not be a Catholic, even though mom and dad didn't even hardly go to church.
Come on.
But it was cultural. It was part of society. It was part of really keeping up with what we call the Joneses, wanting to be seen as if, not because we really believed in Catholicism, but just because we wanted to be seen as having something amongst the people, having a sense of status, because we could afford the quinceañera. We could afford to pay certain things to the church to do certain events there. We could afford to purchase a mass to have a prayer and mass for our loved one who was deceased, because in the Catholic tradition, you pay for these things. And so in order to have these things, it showed that you had some monetary wealth, but it didn't say anything. And we were never encouraged to be good people.
Sure.
We were never encouraged, go read the Bible. We weren't encouraged to be Christ-like. That's why I remember growing up. My uncle's a priest. It's a very high, one of the archbishop status in Mexico now. And he's sitting there on a Sunday at a picnic with us, having a beer. He's sitting there just kicking it with us. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with relating with one another, but in that time, he wasn't talking to us about God. He wasn't talking to us about being better. He was kicking it with us. We hadn't seen him. When I asked him questions about God, he kind of brushed me off. I wanted to know. And he didn't seem to either have the answers or be interested in informing me. Why? Because this, what we have called and accepted as religion, was never given to us to make us like Christ, to make us submit to God. It was given to us as a way to control us for our enemy and the enemy of God. This is what we're looking at today. All of the false religions, all of the false ways, we've got to get rid of them, because all they do is get in the way of us connecting to one another. That's why you'll never find us as followers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, black, brown, red, or yellow, condemning any one of our people who is sincerely seeking a better way. Even if I disagree with the way you're going, if I and we see you sincere, we'll help you. We'll support you. We won't say, oh, we're not following you. You're doing those indigenous ways. No, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan went up to Big Mountain and learned about those indigenous ways. We're not going to condemn you and say, oh, voodoo, that's that satanic stuff. No, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan went to Haiti and learned about some of what that tradition is, because the enemy will always paint what he doesn't control as something negative, something we shouldn't be connected with. Yet all the hell we caught under Christianity, rape, murder, separation of families, the destruction of a people and culture and a whole civilization of life, yet we give them the pass. Why?
Right.
Because we've been conditioned and trained to fear them.
Right.
Because we don't know who we really are, and we don't know who the enemy is. We're absolutely crippled by our ignorance in not knowing the truth of who we are and who they are. This is not hate. This is not anti-Christian. We love Jesus. We love the true teachings of Jesus. And as a matter of fact, we follow the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who said he's a Christian.
Come on.
So how could we hate that? What we hate in ourselves and in others is disobedience to the way of God, is hypocrisy.
Yes, sir.
Is doing wickedness and deceit. So all we want is not a new religion. That's not what this is about. It's not about putting off one religion and now we're going to get another one. No, it's about the truth. That's the key to who and what we are. We don't want an identity. We want the truth.
Identity.
And with the truth, then we can know who I really am. Once I know who I am, now I can start being who I am.
Come on.
And once I start being who I am, I can start to see who you are,
Yes,
who
sir.
my friends are, and who are not. But until I know who and what I am, all of that means nothing. So the religions we've been given, just like every other people on the planet, if they were false, they've done nothing but help to foster division and our shedding of our own blood.
And may I add just a little bit more?
Please, Brother
Dear
David.
brother, just to amplify some of the points that Brother Student Minister Abel said. We know that many of our people practice their African or indigenous religions in what they call syncretism, meaning that they would take the images of Catholicism and superimpose them on the gods that they believed in, particularly when we look at those who practice Yoruba or Santeria. And there's a lot of history with that. But I do want to give this example, family. The first national hero of Cuba was a man named Atue. He was a Taino chief. And when and you can read about this with regards to the history that was given by Bartolomeo de las Casas, where he talks about the indigenous people and their encounter with the Spanish. Well, at a certain point, because he had led his people in revolt against the Spanish, they were going to burn him at the stake. And before that happened, a priest came to him and offered that he become Christian.
That's right.
According to the way of the Spaniards. All right. And so And we should all be clear, as what Student Minister Abel said, that's not the teachings of Christ. That's not the act of Christ. That is the act of a devil.
That's
and
right.
So recognizing that, this Taíno chief said, esos españoles por ahí, esos españoles son cristianos. Se van para el cielo también. Those Spaniards over there, they're going to heaven too, the heaven you're talking about. And he said, pues sí, pues que son cristianos. So of course they will. He said, well, I'd rather go to hell.
That's right.
Than go to heaven with them. All right. Another quick example that I think is valuable. In spite of having all of our indigenous traditions, there were still divisions among us based upon those traditions.
That's right.
So we would be predatory to each other in many respects and prey upon each other before we were preyed upon by a new people from Europe who had a different mindset of evil towards us. So in 1522, Carlos V, the King of Spain, he saw after the revolts of Muslims, particularly in Santo Domingo, or what is called Hispaniola, which is the name of, at that time, of Haiti and the Dominican Republic.
Yes, sir.
And he saw the revolts of Wolofs and those enslaved Africans who were Muslims. Islam has a militant propensity.
That's right.
And so while the enemy would allow syncretism of the practices from various tribal nations and different indigenous traditions, he disallowed Islam from gaining a foothold in the Western Hemisphere because of its propensity for organizing military revolt, and because they knew what they had dealt with under the Moors in Spain. And so they knew they could not bring about that in the Western Hemisphere and be successful. So when you read about it in our teachings in the books of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Message to the Black Man, and you read how Sir John Hawkins and them killed off generations of Muslims and raised up children who had no memory of Islam, that was what they did for the English-speaking crown, but the same was done under the Spanish-speaking crown. And that is why they were informed of how to, we read about this all throughout the history in books like the Black Jacobins and other, by C.L.R. James. We have to educate ourselves, family, if we really want to understand who we are and our true identity. And so Islam, Dudi Bookman, people like that in our history, where you see glimpses and flashes of the root of Islam in us, that comes up at times where we fight for sovereignty and independence and where we make a stand for our identity. And it might come up under one who identifies as Christian, but it helps us take a step closer towards our true identity. And Islam is not something new. It is not a 1,400-year-old religion. It is not an Arab religion.
That's right.
It is the nature of God as the indigenous people, as we have a root in God. And so we have to properly understand that if we want to be successful today and make way for our people, regardless of what we call ourselves, it is the knowledge of God and us learning this from each other that will help us regain our sense of identity in God.
Praise be to Allah. If I could reflect on something that both of you said, Student Minister Abel, in recent times, there has been the growth of liberation theology movements, especially among indigenous tribes and people throughout Latin America. Oftentimes, what you find is an indigenous depiction of Christ. When you have those kind of scenarios taking place, it's just a sign that we're looking for ourselves. And what is being taught presently, it's not sufficient because we are not seeing ourselves. Student Captain David, same thing. When we were using these survival tactics in just syncretizing the Christian religion with Yoruba, it was like a survival tactic. I still need to see myself. In Islam, in the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it gives you the opportunity to more clearly see yourself in your connection and your relationship with Allah God. We do have some more questions here from the broadcast. There was a question here. It's phrased in I understand what exactly they're asking, But it says here, how do I break it down nicely and easy? What Asiatic black man means to our so-called Latino brothers and sisters, so they don't feel left out of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Brother Tony, or I don't know, Brother Abel, do you mind if I go into something about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's definition on blackness?
Sure, go ahead.
Praise be to Allah. Well, you'll hear us tonight all night referencing this book.
That's right.
Okay, you got to get this book. When you see Message to the Black Man, don't get bogged down in the language where you may or may not understand what black means, according to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's important to point out that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the father of black consciousness. But that definition of blackness was far broader than solely representing those from the continent of Africa. We are taught that the Asiatic black man means that the black man is found and finds his root and likeness everywhere all over the planet. And so there are synonyms to the word black where people may find a degree of clarity. Just a breakdown of the term black from Message to the Black Man. He uses the term black interchangeably with the term Muslim. He says, by nature, all members of the black nation are Muslim. That's from page 70 of Message to the Black Man. The term aboriginal appears 15 times. He uses it in the vein of aboriginal black people, aboriginal black nation. He uses the term Asiatic throughout the book. It appears 14 times as the Asiatic nation, the Asiatic black man. As we stated, Asia is in reference to the whole globe, the whole planet. Then original appears 30 times. He uses the term original man, original nation. And then he uses even the term more frequently that is interchangeable, the term righteous. So the righteous nation. So
right.
That term appears over 45 times. And then a little bit less is the term Shabazz, but it's still relevant because those of us who descend from people of African descent, he refers to them as the tribe of Shabazz. That appears over 15 times. Why am I saying this, family? It is because the language black, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave it, is not national. It is universal. And it describes a universal people on the planet who are the darker people of the planet, who are the original people who descend directly from God. And that is how we can better understand who we are in relationship to each other and who we are in relationship to God.
Praise be to Allah.
If I can say this too, it's right in the answer of the term that Rima Nasa was asking that question about Asiatic black man. We can focus on black, but the adjective Asiatic gives us clarity in what is meant by black, because there's an adjective there. He didn't just say the black man, but Asiatic black man. That's not referring to China, Asia. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teach us that at one time the whole earth was called Asia.
That's right.
And we, being the original we're called inhabitants of the planet, we're Asiatic. The Asiatic black man, the original inhabitant of the earth. Depending on where on the earth we habitated, our features change to some degree or another. That's why you have people in Ethiopia with very sharp features, but jet black skin and straight hair. That's why when you go into other areas, you get broader nose and curlier hair. That's why when you go into what's called the subcontinent of India, Asiatic black man. When you go into Western Hemisphere, Asiatic black man. Under a subgroup called Red Indians.
Come on.
But they are not grafted people. This is a group of people that was once the brother of the black man. What does the word red mean?
Go ahead.
Why is that designation given, since red is not a part of a grafting process?
Come on now.
Red is something that happened to the colorization of the skin because of the climactic change which occurred in our venturing into this hemisphere. But the word red is defined as a primary color. Primary means first or original. Red means and has as its root from the Germanic languages, it means to rot or fall away from that which was at once connected to. The people in this hemisphere are naturally akin and part of the Asiatic black man. Not the way you and I have been trained. We've been limited into thinking that black people only look a certain way, have a certain phenotype, have a certain lineage of history, have a certain way that they've been raised up, and it's not true.
That's right.
Talk to your brothers and sisters in Brazil, where they have more black people in Brazil than the rest of this hemisphere.
That's right.
Combined. Where did they come from? Only, but maybe about 10% of the ships made it to North America.
That's right.
The rest of them were in Central America, South America, the Caribbean. Are you going to tell me that they're not black because they speak Portuguese?
Come on.
As if English is a black language? Spanish?
Come on.
These are the ways that we've been miseducated. This is why we need is truth. And we have to disabuse ourselves of the lies we've accepted. And we have to accept that we've been taught, and what we've assumed is wrong because our assumptions are based on misinformation to begin with. Who told you that the people of Africa were the only people you had? Who told you that you were African? Yeah, we know what we're talking about, but do we really know what we're talking about? Because if we did, we wouldn't come up with these terms for ourselves to further separate ourselves.
That's right.
BIPOC, ADOS. I understand what we're trying to say, but do we understand what we're trying to say?
That's right.
We all want to have our own way of saying it, our own way of doing it. It's not sufficient to take it from the man who has us calling ourselves black. None of us, there would be no black indigenous people of color. There wouldn't be us talking about African descendants of slaves or American descendants of slaves if it wasn't for a man who taught us who we really are. But we don't want to accept just what he gave us. We'd rather try to put our own slant on it, and that causes confusion.
Yes,
what
sir.
we want is the pure word. It's right here. It's simple. It's easy to understand. The black man in America. It didn't say North America. Message to the black man in America. The whole Western Hemisphere is referred to as America, because this isn't just good for the people who were brought to the shores of what is the United States. It's good for the people of Jamaica. It's good for the people of Haiti. It's good for the people of the West Indies. It's good for Cuba. It's good for Mexico, because there's black people there who don't even know they're black. We didn't know we were black. It was strange when he started calling us black. That's why we kept referring to ourselves as Negro. Then he started using the term so-called Negro, because that's not our real identity. Who are we really? That's the question. And when we get to that answer, we stop the division, we stop the confusion, we stop the selective way that we want to separate ourselves from our brothers and sisters. And instead, we see the value in having a brother who has Portuguese as a language. Universal. We have the blessing of having a brother who speaks.
Dad, tell him to disconnect the Bluetooth on there.
Oh, somebody's on here. We can hear somebody speaking. I'm not sure who that is. But somebody. Did you all hear that, or was that just me?
Brother David, are you fixing your sound?
No, something happened there.
Okay, so
but that's what I'm saying is just that what we got to do is make sure that we don't need all of the confusion. We don't need to overthink it. It's very simple. Black is not a color. Black is not a race. Black is the essence from which all color comes.
That's right.
And what we are being given is the root knowledge of who we are. I don't necessarily have to call myself a black man. I'm an original man from the originator. It just so happens that originator made himself out of triple darkness. And from that essence we all come. It's not a color. You can't cheapen it to that. It's not a type of feature physically. It's an essence. That's what really tells you and I who we are. And the essence is not a color. The essence is the creator himself.
I'm going to get away a little bit away from the questions that we have. We have plenty of questions that we're going to get back to the questions on social media in just a moment. But Student Minister Abel and Brother David, Student Captain David, what is the problem with tribalism among us today? We in ancient times, before the time of Columbus, if you will, we were suffering from tribalism. In our teachings, we're even taught about a scientist by the name of Shabazz who disagreed with all of the other head scientists and took his tribe, his family, to the area that we know in the teaching as being the jungles of East Asia, which we know today as being sub-Saharan Africa. The idea that my idea is better, my concept is better, my tribe is better, that continued with many of our people in West Africa, and that mentality became pervasive among us throughout the world. Do we experience that problem today of tribalism? And if we don't understand what that means, perhaps our idea of tribalism should expand. Student Minister Abel.
You know, tribalism is one of our biggest problems today. And it's really division. There's a better word for it. What the enemy has done is that it has us really, their work and their way of functioning amongst us has always been to come amongst us and create division. And after spreading lies and rumors and creating division between people who were once in harmony and united, how were they able to do that? Because there was already something present within us that had us seeking to separate, had us at odds with one another. And all they had to do was prod it, feed it, fester it, create more confusion. And then the enemy would come and offer to settle the dispute.
Come on, teach.
After really being the cause of the dispute.
That's right.
But they were only able to do that because there was already something present that allowed us to think ill of our brother. There was already something present that didn't mind the idea of not having to answer to someone else. We had our own ideas. It's all right. But what has happened today is when we have that type of sentiment with lies, with deception, it causes a lot of pain and misery. And this is what we're looking at. We divide over everything. Should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? Should I take a vaccine? Should I not take a vaccine? If anyone says anything, they'll automatically be opposition to it. But you know, opposition doesn't come from Satan. Opposition comes from the nature of things. Even in our own minds, the moment we have a thought, a contrary thought will come up. You didn't necessarily, or I didn't talk to anyone, but already the thought comes up in us in opposition. Why? It is because everything in nature has to be tested. Everything has to be tried. Everything has to be proven. And if the idea is too weak and won't stand up to a test or trial, then it's better to go away with that test and trial. What are we looking at today? We've tested a lot of things. We've had hundreds of tribes, everyone with their own idea, their own language, their own way of doing things. And where has it gotten us?
Come on now.
So the Holy Quran says it like this. I made you, Allah speaking, into tribes and families that you might know one another. The root of what has caused this separation is the gaining of knowledge. Go and test your idea. Go work it out. Go work out the problem And then when we meet again, if we have stayed the course, what lessons have you learned that you can now contribute to the benefit of others who didn't go that way?
That's right.
That's why we're not in the condemnation business, excuse me. We're not in the business of saying who can and who can't do things. We're not that type of people. All of us on here and most who are listening, who are followers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we were in a hell of a condition.
That's right.
Not necessarily just victims, but also victimizers of others by circumstance. But we heard something that affected a change in us because it made us realize who we are. And once we had a sense of identity of self, it made me reevaluate others outside of self. And then I had to treat them different because if I was being forgiven, if I started seeing the value and the preciousness of this life, how can I mistreat someone else just because they're in another tribe? Just because they're in another place, just because they're in another place mentally or in their life. This is what tribalism in its negative extreme can do to us. It causes us to prejudge and be prejudiced and to not consider other people. And in the best sense, it is Almighty God allowing us to work out whatever it is we have in our mind. If we do it out of the right sentiment, out of the right heart, we can bring back knowledge because truth recognizes truth. That's why you heard Brother Student Captain David talking about the history in Haiti of Atwe. You heard him talking about the history in Mexico of Tonantzin.
That's right.
Not because we hate any of these things. The truth allows us to see the truth.
That's right.
It allows us to identify the truth because the truth is like a light. And we are in a time of darkness. We're not trying to offer you and sell you on an idea that our darkness is better. No, all we want to do is offer light of truth.
That's right. Praise be to Allah. Student Captain David, do you have any thoughts?
Sure. Well, I think tribalism has been the aim of the enemy since he was made and arrived on the planet, because
Yes,
we know that they have taken the righteous and caused mischief in the shedding of blood by the telling of lies and accusations. And so nowadays we see that in the community. We see that in the street organizations. We see how they will pit one group against the other and have one side of town against another group, or have one group from a certain ethnic group against the community across town. And so you see that in various parts of the United States, where you see black and brown at war with each other, where you see intra-cultural conflict as well. And you see that taking place throughout Central and South America, as well as the African continent. And it is because of this type of division that the enemy has been able to take the land from the people and enslave our ancestors. But that's not something from yesterday. That's something that's happening right now. And it's not something that happens because of a natural self-hatred that we have. That is taught to us. It is not natural for the so-called Latino to be at odds and be in hatred with the black man of America, because we have a similar root, many of us. We have to be taught self-hatred and be conditioned to do that by our enemy. And then we have to be fed lies about each other from the enemy. And that is what gives us the mindset to do the wickedness that we do, whether it is our idea against another idea, or in that thinking, we take up a weapon against another one and end up becoming the murderers of each other, when the first murder was the sense of self-identity that came at the order of our enemy, our open enemy, who's been the same enemy, not just the last 400 years or the last 500 years, but the last 6,000 years.
If we're going to actually survive, we're going to have to look for the common denominator among each other. And at this time, we're fastly approaching the 1 hour mark. We want to be supportive of our brothers and sisters who are over the Closing the Gap broadcast. Please be supportive. They've been helping us so much with the Nuestra NOI broadcast itself. Please make a Cash App donation to our brothers and sisters who are involved in those efforts. Brother Michael Shabazz, if you could put up the Cash App or the the PayPal when you have a chance, dear brother, so we can be supportive of closing the gap. I want to read another question here by someone else in our on our audience. It says here, I don't see many Islamic brothers in the so-called Latino communities, particularly Chicano. What is the general reaction seeing you brothers come to community fashioned, cleaned, and shaped in the image of Allah, in the person of Master Fard Muhammad and his messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad? And I will add the reflection of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan today. If you brothers could address the question, Brother Abel, we can begin with you.
You know, it's the reception is wonderful whenever we go.
That's right.
You know, I love, and this is probably, I'm thinking about the way I'm not sure, I think it's Shabaka Fetira Inutu who posed the question. You know, unfortunately, with so many other things, when our brothers and sisters from Mexico or Puerto Rico or Cuba, two things may happen. Many of them, you don't know that they're Latino and they're in the ranks because they look like the black man and woman of America.
Right.
I told you we're everywhere on the planet. Panama, Costa Rica, you wouldn't know the difference until they open their mouths to speak and you hear an accent. But also, what happens in some instances is people learn Islam and they don't know where to go. So they go to somebody Islamic and they get consumed in many instances by Arab cultures and customs. And so you'll have a brother Jose and he changes his name to Ahmed or Khalil, which is nothing wrong with those. Those are our names. But we also then start to grow a beard and wear the garments of the East, which is fine. Those are our garments. But we don't become distinguishable. And you may have passed brothers and sisters from Puerto Rico and Mexico and thought they were Arabs because we start to talk with an accent, no longer our Spanish accent, but now an Arab accent. And we start to look like them and fashion ourselves like them, which is natural. You want to fashion yourself after your teacher. I'm just happy that I chose as my teacher and Allah blessed me to have the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
That's right.
So that I don't have to get lost. I'm not taking no darkening or lightening cream. I'm not trying to change my hair texture. I'm just happy to have some hair. I'm not trying to change who I am. I'm falling in love with who I am. That's the beauty of how we're taught. We're not trying to make ourselves into other than ourselves. We're trying to learn ourselves so we can really know ourselves and accept ourselves. And whenever we've gone into the community, we're received with joy. Whether people read English or not, they'll take the final call from us and give a donation because they're happy to see their own dignified, cleaned up. They don't necessarily know that we're Muslims. They know we're some sort of religious people, but they're just happy to see us looking dignified and clean, and they sense something from us. And I don't know if Brother David can share, even when we go out amongst people that we don't know. The first time me and Brother David went soldiering together, we had a wonderful experience. Allah will always show you that he's made friends already that we don't know about.
That's right.
All we have to do, though, is be willing to get up, clean ourselves up, and our people want better. And they see us representing something better. They know we're not Jehovah's Witnesses. They know we're something, though. What is that you all have? And I'll just share this. I was blessed to be in Texas 2 years ago, right around this time. And was invited to speak at a all Mexican church down there. And just spoke a few minutes down there. And the place went crazy. And afterwards, people wanted to just talk to us and meet us. And one brother was so perplexed. He's like, so hold on. So you're Muslim? Mexican brother. I said, yes. So you all believe in Jesus? I said, yes. But you all don't believe, you believe he's just a prophet. I said, well, I believe there was a prophet named Jesus, but I also believe that there is a Christ and I want to follow him and be like him. He said, he looked so perplexed and he said, so then what's the difference between what you believe and what we believe?
That's right.
And I said, brother, that's a great question. What is the real difference? If what you're trying to do is seek the favor of God, and I'm trying to seek the favor of God, why should we have any quarrel or difference with one another?
Yes, Brother David.
If I may, yes, sir.
Please.
Brother Abel, you reminded me of I never forget one time we went to a Puerto Rican event for the Puerto Rican political prisoners. They saw these bow ties and they thought it was a reenactment of Don Pedro Albizu Campos, who,
Wow.
for those that don't know, Albizu Campos is to Puerto Ricans what Garvey is to Jamaicans.
Right.
So there's much wisdom in the way that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the way that Master Farad Muhammad gave to us to go among the people. As Brother Abel said, because of our phenotype, because of the racial mixture, many of us might blend in, or we might choose to subordinate ourselves to the masjid or to the Arab culture, or simply just try and blend in and go along to get along. What I should remind and say to everyone who's listening is the root of Latino Dawa, or the root of outreach to the Latino community, so-called Latino community in the United States for the propagation of Islam, is in the Nation of Islam.
That's
The
right.
first Spanish-speaking mosque and the first Spanish-speaking efforts towards teaching Islam to a Latin American population within the United States is in the Nation of Islam. In California, in New York, you can find it in the root of many of those folks, and you find it in the writings of people such as my brother P.D. Thomas in the book Down These Mean Streets, and
That's
some
right.
of those other pieces where you can find the influence of the Nation of Islam. There is a wisdom in the way that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad sent us. So as Brother Abel said, when I remember one time I was going in the community with a detail of brothers in the Spanish-speaking south side of Milwaukee on a street called Cesar Chavez, 16th Street for those that know. And a brother, older Mexican gentleman, stopped his truck and started saying out of the window, he didn't yell at us, he didn't cuss at us. Here's what he said. He said, "Estos sí son hombres nobles." Why? Because here you have a people in whom is the nature of God. They have that same essence as all original people. And they see something happening among Black people in America with this teaching. So they didn't reject the Black American brothers who came with me. They recognized something different about our presentation as we were moving among the people. We have never truly been rejected when we go among that community. In fact, for those of us, because I know there's a lot of FOI listening tonight, for those of us who go out with the Final Call newspaper, you might want to learn a couple phrases in Spanish.
That's right.
Una donación para el movimiento musulmano, or whatever, or una donación para promover la paz en la comunidad y parar la violencia entre el pueblo. You can just learn a couple phrases. And by the essence of God in our brothers and sisters, they will support your effort because they know it had to be the intervention of God to produce a change in Black people in America. The world does not know and understand what happened to Black folks in this country. And that's why when you read the Muslim program and it talks about we believe in the resurrection of the righteous, we believe that the so-called Negro is most in need of resurrection. But it doesn't stop there. In fact, when you look at the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you're looking at what our beloved brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad calls a medicinal Islam. Well, what is the medicine designed to heal? The healing that we need, that leprous mind that we have, is because of the root of this wicked world, which is a superiority complex based upon white supremacy. And I can't point to a people on the earth who have not been infected by that disease, including white folks. And so this teaching is really, it is needed by every member of the human family, even those Caucasians who should qualify themselves to become a part of the human family by rejecting that satanic mindset.
That's right. Praise be to Allah. Beloved brothers, what comes to mind is just in my own interaction with what's generally called the Black conscious community, just in my history here in Miami. I remember on several occasions, Dr. Asa Hilliard came and spoke here in South Florida. Anybody that knows my background, I'm an educator, and I run a lot in academic circles in my history. Whenever I've gone to these kind of programs, I remember people coming up to me when they found out I spoke Spanish, like, "Man, I thought you were a brother." I'm like, I am a brother. I just speak Spanish. Dr. Asa Hilliard, I was at a workshop with him one time, and we were sitting down just cracking up some videos he was showing the class. And in our interaction with one another, there was a teacher that came up and said, "Dr. Hilliard, is this your son?" He said, "He's not my son, but we are kindred spirits." Dear brothers, can you speak about the larger mission here in regards to, like, oftentimes we get branded in a particular way by the way that we look, but there are a lot of Black folks that look like, in America, that look just like us, and it has to do with who we are. I'm going to pull up this book, Brother David, The World's Great Men of Color by J.A. Rogers. In mosques in the Nation of Islam at one time, and also the FOI were selling this book right here, these books by J.A. Rogers. And here you find Black people from all different types of nationalities. On this cover right here is Arturo Alfonso Schoenberg, who was an integral part of the Garvey movement. He was a Black Puerto Rican. How are the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad crucial for us to expand our minds in our conception, our idea of what Black is, what original is?
May I say something a little provocative, Student Minister?
Please, Brother David.
Tony. Many of our young people nowadays are speaking from the vantage point of what they call, and it's very controversial, critical race theory. And so there's a lot of language that is rooted in academia, on the college campuses, in
yes, sir.
The legal struggle for civil rights and diversity and diversification. That is not the framework of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad definitely is a standard bearer of justice, but it is not limited to the justice that is only appealed to by the Caucasian and his systems. The justice that we seek is a justice that only God can give. And so that justification comes with a true knowledge of self. Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as we've talked about with Blackness, taught about Black from a universal perspective. He didn't deny the need for a nationalistic thought, but nationalism is like children learning primary colors in kindergarten. It's learning this from that and learning distinctions so that they understand themselves in relationship to the rest of the world.
That's right.
But the book that you showed, J.A. Rogers, is very important for those who are historians and those who are learning something about our history. As my brother stated, before we had printed materials, the Muslims sold the books of J.A. Rogers. Malcolm X encouraged all of his students in the ministry class and those who were coming up in Mosque number 7 and in mosques across the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to get the books of J.A. Rogers. And if you look at those books, they talk about, as Brother Abel stated, phenotype and how certain people can pass in different shades but still have a Black root. There's something about the language of today that really does not unify, but it heightens the distinctions of colorism.
That's right.
And what that produces is a caste system where you ain't Black enough to sit in this space, or you're not Black, you got Black in you, but you're not Black enough to have this conversation with this group of Black folks over here, even though some of them is just as light as you. And that's the enemy's influence of language that's dividing us. And so we think we're asserting our identity. What we're really doing is weakening our power because we don't see the common denominator. What we're really fighting for is a more comfortable space inside of our slave master's house. And we're fighting each other for it. And so many of us are using those distinctions to try and present ourselves as woke, but we ain't as woke as we think we are. And the wide awake man understands, and woman, understands their connection to the struggle of the darker people all over the planet. Che Guevara understood that. They understood that at the Bandung conference in the 50s, where all of the Afro, again, Asiatic nations unified and did not allow any of the European nations there. The only Americans who were present at that, and I use Americans in quotations, were members of the Nation of Islam.
Yes, sir.
And so you have to understand how the Honorable Elijah Muhammad elevated the position of Black people in the wilderness of North America, as we say, to take their seat at the table with the rest of the darker people of the world. He framed it properly so that we would find brotherhood with the other nations who are fighting for freedom, justice, and equality as well. That is the real struggle. And too many of us have our blinders on and think that the only space we have to fight from is within the bounds of North America. And we find ourselves trapped and back in the hands of our oppressor rather than in the arms of our brothers and sisters abroad.
All praise is due to Allah. Student Minister Abel, any thoughts?
You know, as I was listening to Brother David, and just thinking on the whole conversation we've had up to this point, I'm thinking about personally how terrible my condition was.
Come on.
When I didn't know and have a sense of self. I thought I was Mexican, but I had never lived in Mexico. I was the first one of my family born in the United States. So I didn't have that real connection, even though my parents, all my siblings, all my neighborhood were Mexican. We loved going to the parade in La Villita here in Chicago on 26th Street and all of that, but it wasn't enough. And so it led me down dark roads, you know? And it wasn't until I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and he started talking about who I was as an individual in his lectures, in terms of not me saying Brother Abel, but just addressing the identity and the knowledge of self, who we are, how we identify ourselves, and how important that is, that I started looking at myself different. And it allowed me to read those books that you pulled up there by J.A. Rogers. It made me go seeking books, and I was not a reader of books. Right. But because now I started having a sense of self, I wanted to know more. I wanted to feed it. I wanted to grow it. I felt like it was important because my mind had been woke. It had been sparked. And I needed to feed that fire. And as I kept feeding it, I kept getting more answers. And every time I thought, I found it, after a while, it wasn't enough. Until I got to really study the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I wanted to read something that he said to everyone about identity. And it's found in a lecture he did as part of study guides called The Will of God, part number 3.
Yes, sir.
And he says, quote, "My dear beloved brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam, or those of you who are Black people, your identity is not your color. Your identity is not the landmass from which you come or originate. Your identity is the nature in which you are created.
Come on.
Since your nature is to obey the will of Allah God, your nature is Islam. You are by nature a Muslim, and any name other than that is not a proper name for you.
Come on.
You are a Muslim. Accept your own and be yourself. This is not about us becoming Arabs or culturally Black Americans.
Come on.
It's not now that Brother David and Brother Tony and me gotta go, get some soul food, and now we're Black. And it doesn't mean necessarily that, to be universal, you got to go get tacos or something. No, that's not. It's so cheap. This is the word of God, the truth that will enliven us, awaken us to be ourselves, not somebody else, but the truth. of who we are. That's why nothing else has been sufficient. That's why we keep changing our names, Chicano, Latino, Latinx, Afro-Indigenous, all of these things, because we're trying to grasp for something, and we've been conditioned to reject who we really are.
That's right.
Not Arabs. We're not asking you to accept no Arab nothing.
No, we're not the Moors.
It is the nature of what you and I and how you and I were created. The nature of a thing tells you its function. It gives you its purpose. We were made to obey God.
Come on, teach.
Not some spirit, not some spook. God, and know the reality of God. See, when you and I don't know who and what this really is, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said it like this: your real name is God.
Come on.
That's not sacrilegious.
Nope.
That's not anti-Islamic. That's the truth. You and I are identified. We're the same with our originator. We originate and we're created by the originator in his likeness, after his image. We are an expression of his divinity. But we're not living a divine life because we don't know who we are. This is all that we want to offer. It's not to make you convert. You can't convert into what you already are. We're not teaching about conversion. We're teaching the truth, and then we're asking and inviting others to accept it.
Come on,
and then be what you've accepted yourself to be.
Teach. Student Minister Abel, Student Captain David, we're at the last 9 minutes approximately of this program. It's about to be 10 o'clock here on the East Coast, 9 o'clock Central Time. We're going to end it off with one question here. There's a question here. Do you think there will be lectures in Spanish to reach more of our, I'm gonna put in the quotations in there, Latino family, quote unquote? Can they get the minister's lecture in Spanish?
I know that there are some translated for those that are on YouTube. There are some believers who have done that. I know that there are other works in the process. I know obviously the last broadcast that Student Minister Abel did on this YouTube channel was bilingual, and Brother Student Minister Abel, I know you have bilingual lectures. So
That's
those
right.
works are in process. I would also just say to the brothers and sisters out there, the brother who fished me into the Nation of Islam didn't speak Spanish. And his use of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when I was a 14-year-old in 1992 was enough to get me on the first meeting, on the first paper that I bought from him. So improve our speaking and improve our language to improve our understanding. But just know that the greater language is a sincere heart with love for the people, because that transcends the language barrier. But yes, there are works in the process of translation.
All praises due to Allah. And anything else, Student Minister Abel, before we close?
You know, just to reiterate what our brother said, you know, there are, if you go to YouTube, there are translations where you can put the subtitles on and it'll appear there in Spanish for you already. We'll have more material if everyone goes to our YouTube page, Nuestra NOI. You'll be able to find more materials. We're going to be uploading them there, as well as through our Facebook page and Instagram. And we also have a Twitter at Nuestra NOI, where we take the minister's tweets and are translating them and retweeting them in Spanish. Why? Because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan instructed us to learn Spanish.
That's right.
So those of us, most of us have already grown up at least hearing it. So we're at one step ahead, but we want to become more proficient. And all of us want to become at least conversational in it, because that language is increasing. And if you want to communicate in the Americas, Spanish is the language, whether it's Canada, whether it's the United States, or obviously anything south. Spanish is our language for that. So make sure that we do that. And I wanted to absolutely, before I forget, to thank Student Minister James and the brothers and the sisters who put this platform that we use together, Closing the Gap. And if our brother Michael, if you could put their Cash App again, this isn't free, just so everybody knows. These platforms,
they need our support.
They do need our support. There's technical things that they have to pay for every month, and we want to make sure if you can make any contribution, if it's just $1 or $5, whatever, something that you're willing to sacrifice so that we can help them, because this isn't the only program on here. They have programs from the research minister. They have programs themselves that they host called Closing the Gap, which I believe is going to be on this Sunday.
Saturday.
Saturday,
7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Saturday with our brother Hashim Hakim on there. And it's a beautiful work that he does. So we want to support them, and we thank them for allowing us to partner with them and use this platform to benefit not just the members of the Nation of Islam as the registered members, but the greater nation of Islam.
That's right.
All the black, brown, red, and yellow people of the planet Earth who are absolutely naturally brothers and sisters to one another. We've only been made enemies by circumstance and by our being in a world ruled by our enemy who has pitted us against each other. But if we keep listening to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we'll overcome those differences quickly.
All praises due to Allah. With that, do we have the Cash App and the PayPal, Brother Dave? I was going to call Brother Dave, Brother Michael, excuse me. Brother Dave is part of the program. Okay. I see the Nuestra NOI contact information. Brother Michael, I'm talking about closing the gap, beloved.
He put it in the comments. It's in the comments.
Oh, praise.
There it is.
All praise. We want to make sure that closing the gap gets our support. With that, Student Minister Abel, we will have our next program come September. What is the date in September, Brother Abel?
September the 9th. So every second Thursday, and if it is the will of Allah, our next one's going to be a great one. We plan on having our great historian and archivist of the Nation of Islam, Student Minister Carlos. And if it is the will of Allah, we're trying to get the great grandson of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who is over the Table Talks project.
Yes, sir.
Our national Imam, Sultan Rahman Muhammad. So it'll be an absolutely unforgettable start to September, right before Hispanic Heritage Month, Latinx Heritage Month, whatever. It doesn't matter what month they call it. We want to make every day a day of truth and a season of truth and a time of truth. So make sure, put it in your calendar, September the 9th. And if it be the will of Allah, September the 2nd, I'll be on. But even before that, in 2 weeks, if it is the will of Allah, which would be the 26th of August, I'll be on to do another live Q&A on the same broadcast here on our Facebook Live page, and we're doing the whole thing bilingual, the presentation with question and answer. So we look forward to having everyone back September 9th and also August 26th.
These are all praises due to Allah.
Brother Tony,
yes, sir. Student Captain David.
I know we're running down to the hour. So may I just 30 seconds to make a comment real quick?
Please.
All right. For those who watched the Olympics, there was a sister named Jasmine Camacho Quinn, and she chose to run and compete for Puerto Rico in the Olympics. She's clearly a Black woman. Now, I'm saying that because tonight's discussion was on identity. All of us have a duty to claim our people and to claim the brotherhood and sisterhood of each other. And it will only come by us seeking each other in that way and lifting that up, that we can do this and bring about a unity between the Black people of America and the darker people of the world. So I just wanted to implore our people, look at that example, look at it through the lens of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and know that it is our time to do so.
All praise due to Allah. With that, we're going to go ahead and close out. Thank you so much for tuning in, brothers and sisters. And so just tune in on September the 9th. And of course, what was that date again, Student Minister Abel? There you're going to be doing the live.
I'll post it up. I believe it's going to be August 26th, but I may come on the 19th next week. We'll see. I love the 19th. We can't let that date slip by.
Absolutely. So make sure you look out for that, brothers and sisters. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe on Facebook, and also follow us on Instagram. Nuestra NOI, our Nation of Islam, through which we could get all of our people here on the planet Earth.
That's right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.